me, your host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for A Dram with Friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 13. We welcome our good friend Deacon Stephen Robinson into the pub, where he will talk to us about God's calling to be a deacon. Sit down as I pour us a dram. Welcome to another episode of A Dram with Friends. We are very blessed today to have Deacon Stephen Robinson, longtime friend, and he's a board member with God Squad Canada. He's a deacon at St. Peter's Parish here in the Diocese of Calgary. So welcome, Deacon Stephen.
Thank you, Sean. It's really good to be here. It's always good to be with you, but especially in this format today. I'm pleased to be chatting with you.
Well, and we're glad to sit down and have a dram with you. It was you that suggested, because you had some remnants from our Knights of Columbus whiskey tasting fundraiser, that we would go with Scarabus. So you still have a bit of the sample, and it's a very, very nice Isla whiskey. It's not overly overpowering, and it's a very reasonably priced Isla whiskey too. So for those that haven't tried it, I highly recommend it.
Scarabus seemed appropriate on Halloween, which is when we are recording this.
So
I've probably already poured more than a dram. You said a dram is 1/8 of an ounce, right?
I know it slipped out. It is Halloween after all, so I must be focusing somewhere else on prayer and protection for all those that are out up to no good today. So who is Deacon Stephen?
Well, hearing some of your other guests talk about their lives, I can give you the thumbnail version. I was born in Montreal, raised in Toronto, in the suburbs of Toronto and Scarborough, until I was 18. And my mother's a solid Croatian Catholic, very strict. And we always said, how come we have to go to Mass so often? Surely the Pope doesn't go to Mass as often as we do. I found out later that he does go to Mass more than we did, but it was serious and interesting that we're around the feast of All Saints this weekend as we're recording, and then of course All Souls. And one of the things I remember from my childhood, typical kid, I would get bored at Mass. One of the things that made a profound impact on me in my Catholic faith was when my mother would take me to the church to pray the rosary for the souls in purgatory on the Feast of All Souls. And I remember one of the most profound experiences, nothing kind of supernatural in a way, but a profound sense that what we were doing really mattered, that this prayer was profound, because, the church there'd be candles, and there would be this sense of solemnity and sacredness about it. And I really believed that we were praying for the souls in purgatory. So even as a child, that struck me. And my dad was the son of an Anglican minister, and son and grandson of Anglican ministers. When I was ordained a deacon 12 years ago, my aunt, my dad's sister, said, you've kept the tradition of clergy in the family going. And so I hadn't thought of it that way before, because my grandfather and great-grandfather, but she saw that there was this special relationship with the church through ordination, and that I was carrying on. So anyway, my dad went to Mass for 40 years and eventually became a Catholic. My dad had retired early, and they were in Central America doing some third world mission work in Honduras. And a priest from French Canada there at the time said to my dad, Eric, you've been going to Mass for 40 years. Why don't you become a Catholic? So they went to the church, and he confirmed him that day or that weekend. So my parents are, as one of my brothers says, still two of the most interesting and fascinating people that we've ever met. My dad's been gone 5 years now. But anyway, at 18, parents moved from Toronto to Edmonton. My dad went there for work, and they were there for 3 years. And I wanted to finish high school where I was, so I stayed in Toronto. Lived with my track coach, my high school track coach, that year. And then I went to Edmonton to go to University of Alberta, and I flunked out. Actually, I went into a trade after that, because what do you do when you flunk out of university? You got to find something else. So I became a carpenter. Was a carpenter working on the tools for about 10 years. And then I got a job with the city of Calgary as a building inspector, did that for 26 years. In the meanwhile, I went back to school, got a degree in communication studies, and then went into the diaconate formation program. People said, why don't you do that? Maybe you'd be good at that. But I thought about it for 6 years, Sean, before I applied. 6 years from the time I thought, maybe that's a calling for me. It took me 6 years. I had the feeling that, well, maybe I should, I don't know, get a little holier or something. I didn't get any holier, but I thought, well, maybe I'll do it anyway. And my wife and I, Marjorie, had to think it out, and was this the right thing to do? And so 12 years ago, I was ordained. 10 years ago, I retired from the city so I could spend more time doing diaconal work in the church. And it's been a blessing. Lots of steps missing there, but we have 2 adult children. We have a natural son, and I have a stepdaughter who's actually now passed away 2 years, but to us, she's still present. And we will be we'll be thinking about her on.
Yeah, that was a tough go, and that's where it was nice to be surrounded by community, because you were recently appointed to St. Peter's, and I remember you talking about the outpouring of support that just shocked you and Marjorie.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I had been at a parish where things kind of, I wasn't kept as busy as I wanted to be, and at the time I had been working on a degree at the Augustine Institute, which you know well. Many of our God Squad speakers have come from there. In fact, I owe that to you and to those speakers that I went to the Augustine Institute. I felt like I wanted a deeper well to draw from on our faith and scripture. And anyway, I was nearing the end of that degree from a distance, and I asked Bishop Henry if maybe I could just take some months off of diaconal duties and go down to Denver and finish my degree there in person. It was 3 or 4 of the greatest months for my wife and I ever, just being immersed in that environment there, right there where form.org, the classroom is right next to the form studio, and seeing Dr. Tim Gray and all those great professors there whom we've learned so much from. When I came back, there was a new bishop. So I went to him and said, what do you want me to do, Bishop? I'll make it work at the parish that I've been at if you want. He said, I'm going to find a parish where they want a deacon. And it took a year. So I was without a parish for a year. He assigned me to St. Peter's, and I thought, that's awesome. I know some great people there. And that's where God Squad is sort of centered, Sean, and many others. But the thing, Sean, that I felt there was that it felt like it was a parish that kind of had it all together already. Things were very solid there. They already had a deacon, Tom O'Toole, who was ordained with me. And so I thought, well, what do I have to offer this parish? And as you allude to, the first thing that happened was our daughter got sick and sicker and sicker, and she died a couple of months after we were assigned to St. Peter's. And what I discovered was that God, in his great mercy, sometimes says to us, I'm not calling you to serve right now. I'm calling you to, in humility, allow yourself to be served. And so Father Jonathan, the whole community of people at St. Peter's whom we hardly knew, the diaconate community, our old parish community, everybody came out to support us who didn't even know Elizabeth. And so that was one of the first experiences there, was that in humility, if we're going to serve others, we need to know how to let God serve us, to receive his mercy, directly and also indirectly through his people. So that was a powerful experience for me, and has formed and transformed how I minister at St. Peter's.
And we're glad you're there. And it's interesting. I talk to especially the young people about the love your neighbor as yourself, and few understand that loving yourself is part of that equation and allowing God to love you where you're at. And thank you for being the guinea pig, the role model for our parish in that way. And it is a powerful witness to allow to be served and loved, because as you say, most people, pride gets in the way a lot of the time.
My gosh, Sean, does it ever?
And so we're thankful. And it's funny how you talk about your grandfather and your, I think, great grandfather were Anglican ministers, and now you're working with a former Anglican minister, Father Jonathan, who is our pastor, and I know he embraces and utilizes your gifts and talents to the betterment of the community. So it's funny how that full circle has come around.
Sure is amazing. You think after years of, being in the faith and accepting our faith and living it, God never fails to find ways to surprise us, to put us in our place if we need it. As you say, pride is an issue. I think in particular for men, I think we have that tendency. And so we need to be, and God disciplines us as a loving father in ways, I think, because he knows what we need. He'll discipline us in whatever way we need it. It might be through just an outpouring of love to remind us that we are to receive. It might be, it's possible it's with a 2x4. I don't know. What do you think about that? Can God discipline us?
Well, because you've been to just about every men's conference, there has been that the speakers talk about that, how it's important for men to be challenged, and men actually appreciate being challenged. And I was going to ask you, what drew you to join God Squad and then the team itself as a director?
I'm really glad you asked that, because I know it's near to your heart, and it is to mine too. As a lay person, I got involved in a number of ministries in the church. With my wife doing whatever, lecturing and Eucharistic minister, and we were involved in RCIA for many years, and marriage preparation, several other ministries. And so I kind of gradually, through all those great Protestant evangelist ministers who became Catholic, Scott Hahn and the rest of them, the Baltimore Catechism as a kid going to Catholic school, but they were the ones who were coming to the Catholic faith with different eyes from the outside. And I kind of followed along with them. And as an RCIA leader, I thought, I need to learn my faith more. And I'm an auditory learner, so I just listened. I developed a library of, 500 cassette tapes of, Scott Hahn and Steve Woods and Jeff Cavins, our friend, and all kinds of people. And I was learning my faith that way. And so gradually trying to learn how to be more and more open to where God was leading. But I loved being in evangelizing ministries, so I loved talking to people about Jesus, as I got more excited about Jesus and the connection of the Old Testament with the New, and the fulfillment that Jesus is of all of the Old Testament types and figures. I just wanted to go to, schools and talk to people. So, but for some reason, this idea of working in men's ministry kind of kept coming up. and we had Tim O'Connor at my parish as well, and you had kind of been bringing him on board, and I guess through him I came on board as well. I got to admit this to you, I've never admitted this, I never really wanted to get involved in men's ministry.
God's got a good sense of humor.
God really does. I thought men are kind of, like couples, it's different, but men by themselves are kind of hard-nosed. They don't, it's not as easy to share faith, and I wanted to share faith with people as I got excited about it. And I kind of saw, a lot of men, there's a lot of men who are great at sharing their faith, but many men, it's kind of like, you got to talk about, you got to talk about head things, they won't go to their heart. I love both. Head, heart, body, sports, doesn't matter. But anyway, yeah, God Squad was kind of a door into a ministry that I thought, okay, Lord, if this is a door and you want me to help out here, I will. And then since then, Sean, more and more opportunities have come up, and more doors have opened there, and invitations to talk to men, to speak to men, to speak about masculinity and fatherhood today. And I started to see what you were preaching from the beginning, which is that what's missing in our culture, what's broken in our culture, is the family. And the one who Satan has targeted first to destroy the family is the fathers. Not only fathers, but fatherhood, the whole idea of fatherhood itself. The idea of God as Father. And so this was clearly, it was clearly not even, an option. If Satan has done this, and I've been kind of invited by guys like you, first of all, you and the other God Squad guys, this is obviously where it matters. And I remember hearing Bishop Henry talk about every time he got asked to do something new, parish priest to seminary rector to bishop, to move to a different place, he would say to his bishop, he'd say, I'm doing fine here. I've got a good ministry going here. I don't want to go. And when he went, within a year, he realized that God had him exactly where he could use his gifts even more. And so it's kind of what I've discovered too. If you go where it looks like God's calling you, God will definitely make it possible for you to serve. Maybe not in the way you would naturally do it, but supernaturally, he provides that opportunity. And clearly we need to, as you've done for 20 years or more, we need to talk to men about masculinity and fatherhood, which doesn't just mean like natural fatherhood, like biological fatherhood. It means fatherhood manifesting God the Father to our whole culture, which is so impoverished. Anyway, lost my thought there, but that's it.
Oh no, that was awesome, and I don't think you know this yet, but I recorded an episode the other day with Bishop Henry, so he's going to be in the lineup just before you. So
fantastic.
And he is a gifted communicator and supported our ministry greatly throughout the years, as you know, and it's incredible to see where society as a whole, and you talk about the evangelization, even during this pandemic, the explosion of material for people to immerse themselves in the faith, as you did for 3 months down at the Augustine Institute, is there. You talk about Formed. Well, this show that we're recording is going on a new platform that's called heroicmen.com, and it's available, or partnership with Formed, to create an atmosphere for men to get a one-stop shop for all that material that you speak of. And I see you've got a few books behind you as well.
Yeah, somebody said during COVID we have 3 kinds of books. We have the books that we're going to read someday, the books that we're never going to read but we don't want to get rid of them, and the books that we want people to see behind us on Zoom.
There you go. Well,
But no,
all my
most of
books
them,
are in front of me here, so
yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
see just the edge there.
I use a few
What?
of these for preparing for homilies. So yeah, so they're not just gathering dust, but
There you go. Well, one of the things you talked about is being an athlete, and a lot of people don't realize that that is one of the things you do for fun is run triathlons, and at a
yeah,
very high level. So
yeah.
uh, was it third in the world you were ranked for your age group here recently?
Yeah, I just get to compete against the old guys, the guys my age, which is nice. They've separated that out. So, I was never an elite athlete as a youngster, but I'm very keen in athletics, baseball and hockey, and later on as a runner, and later on as a swimmer, even at university. I was a pretty good athlete, but never could be considered as an elite. But 13, 14 years ago, I kind of discovered triathlon because I was just trying to keep fit, swimming, biking, and running. And then I found out they made a sport just for me. And so I went into triathlon. It was like the most amazing experience ever. And so the question would be, as an older person getting a little older, would I be able to train for it? And I found that if I'm smart, I can train and get better every year, even at my age. Even into my 60s, I was getting better and better. And then I took on a coach, a young guy who studies, how to lead. So he's fantastic. He understands me. And so I started to compete, and then they had this thing called the World Championships for triathlon age groupers, and you go for your country. You wear a Canadian uniform. You have an opening ceremonies at an event somewhere in the world. I've been to London, to Australia, to the Netherlands, and in here in Canada, to Chicago, competing at World Championships. My best two finishes in my age group for the standard distance triathlon are fourths. I've had the crying position twice, 2/4. So still working.
That's pretty incredible. If you think about the world,
Yeah,
there's a whole lot of athletes out there, and so one of the segments that we do, Deacon Stephen, is what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? As we know, a lot of the young men are struggling finding their identity and even what is a man. So what advice do you give your 18-year-old self?
yeah. I heard you ask this question to others, so I've been thinking about it nonstop. I thought, I don't know. Do I have an answer? Do I have an answer? Uh, But one of the things kind of tying it to what we've been talking about sports, for me, sports is not separate from faith. Uh, when I feel fit physically, I feel like um, I feel like God is inviting me to be fit spiritually. And so I've tried to unite those two things together. That when I'm that when I'm in front of the congregation or representing the church as a deacon or just being with my wife, I try to be fit spiritually. And uh, so that keeping physically fit and even being able to compete reminds me I never compete to beat somebody else. I try to compete to kind of better myself, but also to build up my sense of my spiritual self as well. I always pray, especially when I not not so much in the water in the swimming, because you got to just make sure you stay alive in the water. And by the time you get to the run, you're exhausted and just trying to finish. On the bike, I always pray. I always think about my father, who was an athlete. Was a good athlete. He was a boxer and a football player, and he taught us to love sports. And we would wrestle, right? So I got a sense of fatherhood and that the way that fathers can connect with especially their boys. I never said it, but I have 4 brothers, no sisters. So the 5 of us liked nothing better than to jump on my dad all at once on the living room floor. And he loved that. And those were some of our best times ever. And so what I would tell my 18-year-old self is, you could have a wish list, like what I wish my 18-year-old self would know that I know now. But I don't think that that's what your question is getting at. I think that what my 18-year-old self would need to know, that I would need to affirm, was that, Steve, while you love your family, you need to make sure that you stay close to them. You need to make sure that you maintain a relationship with your father, with your mother. Show them how you love them. Show them how you obey the fourth commandment. Maintain a relationship with your brothers and other people in your life. I liked people. I was always happy to be around people, had good friends, liked my family. But I think I lost a little bit of what's essential to a young man growing up, to maintain and put something into those relationships. And then I would say to him, and on that same vein, don't, even though you might wander away from the church, which I did, and took a while to come back, don't lose touch with your relationship with God. Don't abandon it. It's going to be more and more in a part of your life as you mature. So I guess that's what I would say, Sean, as I would tell myself. Learn how to be in relationship with family, with friends. Try not to be selfish and self-centered in those relationships, and maintain a relationship with God until you're ready to draw closer to him.
And as you know, he's always there patiently waiting for us, no matter how far we wander. So if a young man's listening to this, know that there's men out there that are going to support you and help you on your walk. And also, do not be afraid to ask for help. Because I was reading scripture as I've been doing since you and I did the Activated Disciple. I've been keeping up with daily scripture readings. And this one struck me from the other day. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain.
Boy, that would be great advice for an 18-year-old self too, wouldn't it? Your labor for the Lord will not be in vain. That's beautiful.
Well, even for those that are struggling in this COVID world that we live in and have the heart of evangelization like you do, and how it's so much more difficult, but with A Dram, with friends, we can still reach out to people. And so I told you I was going to throw in a twist for you today because
Okay.
you were studying for the... So I'd like to know, Jeff Cavins talks about having your posse. I'd like to know who your favorite saint is and why. Your saint is,
right.
Not Satan.
Okay, very good. I don't think I would have got that wrong, but
yeah.
You know, it's interesting because Jeff developed the Activated Disciple, and one of the things he says at the beginning, as you go through and do the Lectio Divina and develop the program, developing virtues, he says, make sure you have your posse of saints. That's his term, isn't it? So 5. He recommends 5. You can have more. The very last course I took, which was in church, what's happened to Christianity in modern culture, and sort of the last 500 years of history of the church and the various rebellions against the church, ending with the last few, the sexual revolution and the rebellion against our sexuality, and then in these days the rebellion against our own identity as men and women. Our professor in that course, it was an amazing course to understand why we are the way we are and what's happened to Christian culture. So he asked us in our lecture if we would identify which saint that we had studied, who we thought we could use their ideas for how to reestablish or rebuild Christian culture today. And I chose St. Teresa of Avila. I could have chosen St. Thomas Aquinas. I love Thomas. You asked for one, and I would pick both of those. Thomas Aquinas, so down to earth. So the master, of course, the intellect, the superior intellect, but always combined with the deep spirituality, 3 hours in front of the Blessed Sacrament every day. But Teresa of Avila, I think, is a saint for today. 17th century Spanish a mystic, but a very practical saint. You know, sometimes we think of the mystics as having these kind of weird mystical experiences that kind of freak us out. But Saint Teresa could have those experiences, but not let herself get swept away by them. One time, one of the nuns asked her, Sister, I experienced levitation in front of the Blessed Sacrament. What should I do about that? And Teresa said to her, don't worry, it'll pass. I thought that was beautiful, right? Don't get swept away, even by ecstatic spiritual experiences. Come back to being who you are in the present and ask God to enter into your life. So I think there's many things about Teresa. She's a practical spirituality, but also a mystical spirituality, and she combines them. Her obedience to the church and her superiors, even when they were guiding her wrong, was profound. She had spiritual directors who were assigned to her, young priests, who later, she said, my eternal soul was in danger because they told me that what was mortal sin was only venial sin, and what was venial sin was no sin at all. So she knew that we had to confront our sinfulness, but she also had this tremendous gentleness of spirit when she was dealing with people, knowing that people can only pray as much as their state in life allows. She didn't make ordinary lay people pray like the nun trying to do it. She'd say, you have your wife and your family, your job and your family. You should pray this much, but don't try to do more. So anyway, deep spirituality with a practical spirituality, but also uncompromising in front of sin, her own and in others.
Thank you very much. She also had a great devotion to my buddy, St. Joseph. And so thank you for sharing. I don't know if you know this, but the Gaelic word, the origin word for whiskey is Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And I pray that you and I continue to lead, especially men, to the eternal water of life, our friend Jesus. And thank you for sharing a dram with us. I hope that we can do this again, probably in person, once this pandemic's over and you can come see the pub again. So,
yes, I've seen it and I want to see it again in person. Sean, I have to say, in all sincerity, not just because it's your show, your podcast, but you have always been an inspiration to me because, first of all, your tremendous faith, the way you've incorporated that into your family, and the way you never give up, and you're a St. Paul to me. You just keep on going.
Well, I don't think we have much of a choice. As Peter said to Jesus, where else do we go? So, and we have a mission and we're going to complete it. And I pray one day that we're standing, hearing the words, well done, my good and faithful servant. So,
yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, have a great evening, and hopefully you don't stay out too late trick-or-treating. So,
well, now that I've had probably a couple of drams in here, my dad was just a great man. I learned so much about fatherhood from him, about the fatherhood of God from my dad. But he used to have this thing he did when he was at a party, and they'd be having a drink. He didn't drink that much, but he'd go like this, and he'd say, "This stuff doesn't affect me."
There you go. All right. Thanks.
Anyway, God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and your ministry and our ministry together. We look forward to continuing this work. It's all we can do, isn't it?
Amen. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Please contact us at adram@godsquad.ca or go to godsquad.ca to make a donation. Thank you very much.